feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrimp Tank. This is Mark Scribner, your host, along with my co-host John Warner from Link Ventures. The Shrimp Tank is nationally syndicated with 13 host cities. It's now international through iHeart, Google, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Basically anywhere that you can get your podcast, you can find us here on your preferred platform. We'd love to get your followership. So if you could smash that like button and the alert, so get this show, all our previous shows. We now have something like 1,000 shows in the can right now. The tagline of the show is where book smarts and street smarts collide. And John and I, over the years, have been able to interview some of the most amazing CEOs, entrepreneurs in and around Boston, but more globally. And so with that said, we have an awesome guy today. His name is Itzik from Pay Zen. I'm gonna let John introduce him because he's very close with him with his bio. So John, why don't you take that away?
Sure. Itzik is a serial entrepreneur. He's CEO of this great company, Pay Zen. I think the name says a lot. I also like that Itzik was a professional basketball player. He's 6'8", played for Israel on their national team, I believe. But he's a force of nature, and he's trying to empower people through AI and help them navigate the healthcare system. And I'm excited for people to learn what he's doing and how effective it is and what his aspirations are to build a really beautiful company that can have a lot of impact and be a unicorn.
It's like one of the things I did a live segment a couple weeks ago on a national broadcast, and one of the big phenomena, at least in terms of the retail space, was this concept called pay now or buy now, pay later, where you're at your kiosk and you can defer your payments and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about Pay Zen, because I think there's some similarity in terms of the healthcare space of the difficulties that people have with these expenses and how unique your technology and your approach to healthcare is.
Thanks, Mark. First of all, good to be here, and thank you for the kind words introducing me. You're spot on. I mean, buy now, pay later has done some amazing things for e-commerce and purchasing, especially big ticket items that you want to defer some of the payments and you can't afford right away. Buy now, pay later has been great for merchants and for consumers. And when you think about healthcare expenses have been growing. I mean, there's a consumerization of healthcare where you shift a lot of the payment responsibility to the patient rather than payers or insurance companies. And those expenses are just not planned or budgeted. Nobody plans on being sick or need care. So, an average family these days have an average out-of-pocket expense on an annual basis of $4,500. No one really can, an average American cannot afford to pay that bill. What Care Now, Pay Later, which is basically a verticalized industry we carved out for ourselves, took a lot of inspiration from the buy now, pay later space. And our goal is to make healthcare affordable for patients, encourage more access to healthcare because that has been reducing as well because of affordability. And just to kind of summarize, Care Now, Pay Later is solving the affordability crisis in American healthcare. It's helping patients go to the doctor and afford their care. And it's helping providers getting paid because providers have, on the other side of the equation, you have providers who are providing service are just unable to collect that type of payment from their patients. So we're helping everybody using sophisticated technologies, using a lot of machine learning and AI to underwrite patients into payment plans that have never had any interest or fees. We approve 100% of patients to pay. So there's no real approval process. We let anyone who wants to pay participate. But what we're trying to do here is to make sure that we put you on a payment plan you can actually afford and maximize your repayment success. That's the, in a nutshell, that's Pay Zen.
So I have two questions for you. One, what was the genesis of the company? And two, where do you think it could go?
John, I mean, the genesis of the company, there were a lot of, I think I've been on a voyage throughout my career and my personal life that kind of brought me to the decision to start Pay Zen and just the realization that Pay Zen needs to exist. And it starts from, 18 years ago, I unfortunately had cancer, and fortunately for me, I was very well covered with insurance. I recovered, everything was fine, but I still got $40,000 worth of medical bills. And that was really good insurance, by the way. I paid it. I was fortunate enough that I can afford that, but I was thinking, I was struck by that back then and said, how do people who, makes an average living can afford this? I mean, this is unsustainable. Fast forwarding a little bit, when I started working in what we call today FinTech 1.0, I mean, I was Chief Business Officer at Prosper Marketplace. We saw that a lot of people are taking loans from Prosper for the purpose or stated purpose of paying medical debt. So medical debt has been growing significantly in the last 2 decades. The number one reason for medical debt, for bankruptcies in the United States, is still medical debt. Another data point that kind of brought me to that conclusion was I was CEO and founder of a company called Beyond Finance, a company that was settling consumer debt for the consumer. And the number one or fastest growing type of debt was medical debt. So all of those data points together, combined with my experience and my team's experience, brought us to the belief that PayZen needs to exist. You can solve that problem with fintech and technology and innovation that's been kind of lacking and missing in the space. And we thought we were the right team to do that.
Itzik, with your expertise, technology and fintech, could this be something that could be applied to, say, like pet care?
To what care?
Pet care, like animal care?
It could, although I really believe in a real tremendous amount of focus. There's so much to fix with, call it human care, I guess, that we're focusing on mostly non-elective procedures. And we're focusing mostly on, taking care of everyone who has an out-of-pocket expense. And I think there are some solutions that are suitable for the elective side of healthcare, meaning plastic surgeries and other similar procedures. And those solutions typically carry an interest charge. We feel like our North Star is never charge interest for this use case and approve 100% of patients. Meaning, if somebody wants to pay for their healthcare, let them pay for their healthcare and put them on the right plan. Now, when you think about, and John mentioned where this could go, PayZen started selling its services in April last year. We now have more than 15 health systems on our platform, so a lot of growth in the last few months. We're going to grow, probably add 40 to 50 more systems this year. And the transaction volumes that we see in the company is just skyrocketing. I mean, there's a lot of traction. And if you think about the market we're playing in, the size of the market, and we look at affordability, we look at a two-pronged approach, a two-pronged problem. One is the unpaid medical bills problem in the United States, which is essentially a $330 billion a year problem, growing at around 15% a year. So it's a growing problem and it's huge. The other one, so we're helping patients pay their medical bills post-care and helping providers collect on those bills as well with our system. But we think that our solution will essentially increase access to healthcare. You see another problem today where basically people with high deductible health plans, which are the majority of health plans today, are deferring their care. They're not doing preventative care. They're not going to the doctor when they need to. If it's not urgent, they're really not doing a procedure. All of that because they don't want to pay their deductible. And our approach will be, hey, you can afford your care. Go to the doctor, do what you need to do, because we feel like that type of attitude will create basically a very poor health outcomes or chronic disease down the road. And we think that, with a solution like ours, you encourage people to know that they can afford their healthcare. It will be, they'll be approved. It will be something they can afford using our AI and underwriting. And it's a win-win for everybody.
Itzik, I want to pick up on what you just said, AI. Artificial intelligence, assisted intelligence. talk a little bit about that, because I get the feeling that's one of your key differentiators, and how's it working, and where could that go? I feel like there's a lot of developments in AI. A lot of people throw around the word AI. Like, is it just marketing and there's no there? Like, what do you got going on with AI?
Yeah, AI is the most abused term, and ML is starting, machine learning is starting to be the same. Essentially, the way we use AI and machine learning is our underwriting is focused on one thing: put a patient on a plan that they can actually afford. Meaning, don't propose something to somebody that is impossible for them to pay. And our understanding of cash flow for a patient is key to understand what can they afford in a way that will not overburden them financially and actually be successful in paying. So that's one problem we use AI for. And so use of a lot of data and a lot of historical data we analyze all the time. When it comes to machine learning, there is no real good data today on payments, healthcare payments. Essentially, those payments are not really reported to the bureaus. So you can't just go buy a set of data and do a retro set and trying to predict, loss rates and et cetera, which are very important in our business. So our ability to use machine learning and very quickly iterate on our models based on performance of our current customers gives us an advantage of evolving our model very quickly, or much quicker than if we were not to use that type of technology. So our objectives are to be very precise when it comes to the plans we're offering our patients, but also learn from our vintages, or meaning our past customers, in a much quicker way than waiting for actual results. So kind of a lot of predictive analytics is happening here.
So the debt collection agencies must absolutely hate you, because you bypass all that big, huge, multi-billion-dollar industry every year.
Well, you're making a really good point. They don't really. Well, they're going to get less debt because of us to process, because essentially, what we do is we don't chase people who are not interested in paying. Our thesis is actually pretty simple. Our thesis was, most Americans are decent people who are trying to pay their obligations. That's kind of the number one thesis we have. If you give them a fair way to pay their bills and obligations, more people will adhere to paying their bill. That checks out. We proved it already in a big way. Some people will choose not to pay and will still go to collection agencies or whatever their medical provider has chosen to do with that type of debt. But people who enroll into Pay Zen are people who are interested in paying. They just want to pay it over time. So the typical customer we have is someone who is really interested in paying their bill. They just can't afford to pay it in one shot. So give them a break and try and make them pay it over time. Stretch
out to cash flow. It's like so obviously you have a great pedigree and prosper. And do you consider yourself a data scientist first and foremost?
Not at all. Even though my focus in high school and school was math and computer science, I'm not a data scientist. I feel like my strength is more product and finding product market fit. What I mean by that is identifying problems and applying technology and products to solve those problems. And I was being very fortunate in my life that some of my ideas were successful. So when it comes to data scientists, I rather hire the best rather than use myself.
And it's like, do you have to marry the FinTech with capital, or is this just pure cash flow? Cash flow comes in, it goes out the door. Like, is there a capital that's required to match up, whatever streams that are being outlaid?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So yes, we have credit investors who essentially are investing in the debt we create. So essentially those assets that are created from our financing are being purchased and financed by credit investors. And it's becoming, first of all, it's a massive market. As I mentioned, there's a $330 billion a year of unpaid medical bills. And if you just think of American spend, the total American spend on healthcare out of pocket is $1.2 trillion, right? So it's a very big market. So credit investors take note, and when you look at volumes and the quality of credit we produce and the assets we produce, it's a very, very appealing asset class.
How satisfied are your customers? My guess is that they are evangelists for your product. And are you finding a flywheel from satisfied customers to help build buzz and momentum for your company?
So our first customers are the providers, because we're not going direct to consumer. We're going to a medical provider and say, we can help you offer more payment options to your patients, and here's how it works. Essentially, PayZen improves every KPI that a CFO or a rev cycle management leader at a provider level would want to improve. When it comes to increased payment adherence, I think now we're around 28% on average. So 28% more people will pay their bill because you offer them flexible payment options. That's massive for a healthcare provider. I remind you that the average collection rate for out-of-pocket expenses after insurance in the United States is hovering between 25 to 28%. So only 25 to 28 cents on a dollar are being collected these days from patients. So when you increase the pie like this and increase payment adherence, that's a massive lever that you have. The other thing, of course, is we accelerate capital for the provider in a much, in a very appealing way, in a non-recourse way. They're cleaning their books. It's off their books. They don't have to carry that bad debt. Their days in AR are much lower. So from an accounting perspective, you help the provider focus on delivering care rather than delivering financial services. So what we find is that we're becoming a very close partner to the provider when it comes to providing that type of financial product to their patients. But let's not forget that our true customers are the patients. We're serving both audiences here. The patient is somebody we need to take care of. And I'm very proud to tout our NPS scores, because quite frankly, I was kind of bracing the first time we checked our NPS. So, I didn't think that anybody would like us because we're basically asking you to pay a medical bill. But we have over 60 NPS scores, which is, if you look at it, the average in healthcare is less than 30. So patients love paying their bills using this kind of system. And the two leading indicators there are that it's easy to use. So we have a very superior patient experience when it comes to the digital experience we provide. And they said the second reason was how affordable we make their bills.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I know you're a product guy. Where would you like to see the product go? Like, what's next?
So I cannot jump the gun because we did not announce it yet, but we are announcing a new product in end of March, which will take everything we created as a platform to a whole new level when it comes to access and ease of use. Our product will allow a lot more people to use non-interest payment plans to pay for any medical expense that they have. And we'll announce that in a month and a half. We also are closing a lot of partnerships. Essentially, if you think about it, you can go directly provider by provider and sell them a solution. But there are a lot of payment processors and technology companies that are already providing services to medical providers. And we're about to announce some very large public companies that selected PayZen as their pay over time option when it comes to, instead of building it themselves. I guess the closest parallel I can think of is a firm can go directly to merchants, but they also have a very large deal with Shopify. Same thing. I mean, PayZen can close direct deals with providers, but also work with partners who have access to a lot of providers, and we are part of the checkout flow as a platform. So very exciting developments there. And just shows how flexible our platform is and how needed it is, because we have a bunch of partners in the space who are hearing from their providers, we need affordability solutions because our patients cannot afford healthcare.
I was my day job is a financial planner. I was actually just on the phone with a couple of clients, and they asked me specifically, well, how do they calculate what their expenses are for healthcare from 65 to their life expectancy? And Fidelity locally put a study out that the average per person is about $300,000. And that's, with really great coverage with, Medicare supplements and things like that. So I would assume the space is just tremendous for you. But how do you protect yourself from, say, like here in Boston, we have partners, they're the Goliath, but how do you protect yourself from some of these big medical insurers from offering a service themselves or trying to bypass you?
Well, the consumerization of healthcare was caused by, insurance coverages who include high deductibles, right? So essentially, when you think about it, 40 years ago, your insurance plan had a very small participation from the patient, and more of the care was covered by your insurance coverage. The plans are structured today as such that you have a lot more to pay yourself. Insurance companies can partner with, or payers can partner with Pay Zen, and as they give an insurance plan to somebody with high deductibles, they can also give the coverage we provide, so that if you ever have an out-of-pocket expense, here's a way for you to pay for that expense. Whether they'll build it themselves or rely on a partner like Pay Zen, TBD, but from our conversations in the market, we know that there's going to be competition. It's too big of a space to leave it just to Pay Zen. I mean, buy now, pay later was pioneered by a firm, and very fast afterwards, you saw Klarna and Afterpay and Split It and other companies who are doing similar things.
Affirm, yeah.
Affirm basically was the first to kind of enter the market with this. So, I assume there's going to be more competition. It's a very large market, as I described before. I think that with our strategy of being a platform and allowing people to partner with us, it makes our product more defensible and allows us to compete better when the competition will come. But I welcome the competition. Essentially, there's a lot to figure out here. It's a big market. And, so far, I didn't see any direct competitor yet, but I'm sure there will be.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's a great company, great, really well thought out. I'm curious, what is the partnership that might be able to help accelerate your reach and, what your company can achieve?
I think that, there's a lot of, so that's a great question. There's a lot of different partnerships that can accelerate things, but I think that distribution of our products into more and more patients will be the key, right? So essentially, how do we get in front of as many patients as possible, as fast as possible? I think that, quite frankly, we're working on those partnerships right now. So a little bit hard for me to discuss it because we need to announce a partnership that we weren't ready to, we were not ready to talk about yet. But essentially, if you saw the announcement we had with Epic last week, essentially Epic is now being used by 40% of all healthcare providers in the United States. So essentially, if you're a medical provider that has Epic MyChart, you can use the Pay Zen app within your Epic implementation without any need for further integration, for example. These are the types of activities that we think will help us accelerate our growth. But quite frankly, the problem we have right now is that we have too much work and we can't hire fast enough. I mean, I'm sure you all hear it from a lot of different entrepreneurs that hiring is quite difficult these days, and we cannot grow fast enough, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if I'd like to accelerate things right now because we don't want to break everything, but it's this is the market. So one more thing to add is that a lot of our engineering is in Israel, which helps us hire more engineers over there. But the hiring market is definitely a challenge right now.
I have two potential.
Let me just ask a follow-up question there.
Yeah.
You're Israeli and you're based in Silicon Valley for a few decades now. What is your assessment of how those factors help you guys build a great company?
So the three co-founders of PayZen, myself, Tobias, our COO, and Ariel, our CTO. Ariel is in Tel Aviv. We all worked together before, so this is not our first rodeo together. I think that knowing each other and working in a similar setup where there's a distributed team overseas, 10 hours away from us when it comes to the time zone, requires us to kind of get to know each other a lot more. So we use there are disadvantages of the time zone. Obviously, we overlap for a few hours a day in the morning here in California, but there are a lot of advantages. First of all, our team in Israel is fantastic. There's a great talent pool over there, so we're tapping right into that. And when we go to sleep, they start working. So there's a 24-hour cycle of development that is really helping us move much faster. COVID, I guess, was a challenge because we used to travel more and kind of create more of a culture around the company of people kind of getting to know each other. So that was kind of a bummer to not be able to do that as often. But, there's the advantages are, each side of the company is doing what they're good at. And we are really good in the financial services side, meaning getting enough funding for the company, debt finance for the company, and of course, selling the service. And in Israel, there's a tremendous amount of expertise when it comes to developing large-scale systems, secure systems. So we're very fortunate there.
I was going to say one of the really great link partnered companies, Trust and Will, they might be a partnership to consider, and maybe even AARP is an avenue for you just because of that metric that I discussed. I see that people with cash flow and retirement, and that's when seems like a lot of medical expenses start to appear and when you start to get older. I was curious how, with the FinTech, do you have to have a really robust sales process? Because sometimes when you have, you have this perfect mousetrap that you've created, but is there an education component that's required for the end user and, building up the knowledge base? Because you're new in this space for a lot of people, even though like pay now, buy now, pay later is starting to be very common. But do you have to assemble a really big sales force to meet with the different providers?
That's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, we have to create a really great sales force. The reason for that is the type of sale we're doing is an enterprise type sale. I mean, we're selling to large medical providers, and that has its own challenges. And there's a lot of security concerns and a lot of we made it very easy for them to work with us when it comes to the integration. They really don't have to do anything, but still, selling to a medical provider is a process which is very similar to an enterprise type sale. But the other side of this coin, and you mentioned that, patients understand what we're doing right away. There's really not a lot of education from the patient side. When you offer them a way to pay something over time, they're used to it from e-commerce. They see it all over the place. So in a way, buy now, pay later really helped us get the understanding from the patient. I'll give you some staggering numbers here. Almost 80% of all patients who see an offer from PayZen end up paying their bill. So the adoption of that type of payment option is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John, go ahead.
Great. Well, I have just really enjoyed watching you lead this company. I think a big part of it is you really care about serving people and helping people. I think a lot of people are really burdened by medical expenses. Maybe talk a little bit about why the word Zen in Pay Zen. I feel like that telegraphs something about your values, and maybe kind of expand on that.
That's kind of, you hit the heart of the mission of the company, John. I think, look, I've done quite a bit in my life, and financial services can be very helpful to a lot of people. But when you think about giving loans to people at Prosper, yeah, you open up credit for a lot of people, but you give them money, you don't know what they're doing with it. I mean, sometimes you create additional debt to someone when you approve them for a large loan. Here, I go to sleep at night and I wake up every morning really excited about what I'm doing. And the rest of the team, I mean, throughout the company, everybody's feeling the same sense of mission. There's a huge problem, and what we do really helps real people get the care they need. Because we are a mission-driven company, we have to kind of establish our North Star. And our North Star is, like I mentioned it several times in this conversation, but it's very important. Look, it's really easy in FinTech to approve people for credit if they have good credit. That's kind of an easy thing to do. But approving 100% of patients, that's very hard, right? So finding a way for someone to pay their bill in a way they can actually afford, no matter what their situation is, it's a very challenging underwriting exercise you need to kind of go through. So our North Star is 100% of people will be able to participate if they want to pay their bill. And the other one is don't charge any interest. I think that shows you, like I said, to the point of your question is, we really care about what we do and the impact we're making in people's lives. It's the number one thing that guides us when we come up with new products. This is what the guiding or the North Star we have. How is it helping patients in a better way? How is it providing more access to healthcare? How do you encourage people to go to the doctor when they need to and not worry so much about paying for it? So we're living and breathing this every day, and that's what's guided us.
We're about to wrap up, but I was just curious. It's like I mentioned when I started the show, you've had so much success in different companies. What do you think is your biggest attribute and skill set of being an entrepreneur that you've been able to bring to this project and just in general? Like, the show is where book smarts and street smarts collide, and we get to talk to a lot of serial entrepreneurs or younger people. But the 20-year-old Itzik, what would you put out there as being your number one attribute?
When I was younger, one of my mentors, my very important mentors, was the CEO of WebEx, Subra Ayar. And he told me something that resonated with me until today. And he told me a CEO has a pretty simple job. If you do three things really right, you're doing a great job. And those things are: don't run out of money, hire the best team, and set the right direction. And I would add to that, based on my experience, that, making sure that the company stays true to its mission and there's no deviation from that, kind of stay the course. And I touched on focus before when you mentioned, would that be good for potential pet care? Yes, but I don't believe a company can do more than one thing really well. So I think that if we know how to take care of people in a better way when it comes to affording their health care, also taking care of the providers and pay them their fair share, there's not a lack of market size here to go after. It could be a very profitable enterprise for us while we're staying true to our mission. So my advice is stay focused, then don't run out of money.
That's great.
It's a last question from me. You're a professional basketball player. What kind of game did you play, and how has that manifested itself in your in the kind of leader you are today?
Yeah, this is a very, very important part of my life, and I think especially team sports, especially if you're a professional athlete in team sports, like basketball. Basketball is a perfect example. I think professional athletes can make amazing executives in today's world. Because, there's a lot of dynamics. There's a coach, there's other players. Everybody's depending on everybody else's success. If you're a power forward like I was, if I don't pick for the shooters, I'm never going to get the ball. I rely on them. If I don't shoot enough points, I'm not going to make a lot of money because, essentially, if you don't score, you don't get paid. And everybody wants minutes, so everybody wants to be nice and prove themselves to the CEO/coach, right? So, in a way, it sets you up in a really interesting way for a highly competitive team dynamics that resembles high-performing teams in corporations as well. So I truly believe that someone who has been in this kind of environment and survived and was successful, it sets you up really well for being successful as an entrepreneur and as an executive.
Itzik, you have a standing open invitation when you come to Boston, go to a Celtics game with John and I. I know you
would
come.
Love to go.
So.
I've never been to. I lived in Boston for 2 years and I've never been to the New Garden. So that's shame on me, but definitely will take you up for it. I'll take you up on it.
I'd like to remind all our listeners, we'd love to get your followership. Just smash that like button, the alert. You get this show, over 1,000 shows. We're in 13 cities across the country. Itzik, for our listeners, your bio information is going to be in the body of the show, but do you have a preferred way that a potential partner or somebody's interested in reaching you should get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can just email at info@payzen.com and I'll read it.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and we'd love to have you on board for an update down the road.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.